Welcome back. Last time we looked at the first 24 verses of John chapter 6, where Jesus fed the crowd of 5,000 people by the Sea of Galilee and then later that night walked on water. And I told you that verses 14 and 15 were key because that's where the people become convinced that Jesus is the prophet, who's a messianic figure that Moses prophesied about. And then it says they want to make him king by force, meaning they want to overthrow the Roman government with Jesus as the leader of a rebellion. And I mentioned that Jesus, of course, has a very different agenda for his life. And then we saw that the crowds become curious because they realize that Jesus wasn't with his disciples when the boat left and they want to know what happened. So they follow the boat. They go to the other side of the lake. Verse 25 says when they arrive and they find Jesus there, it looks like they maybe suspect that a miracle has taken place. And they say, "Rabbi, when did you get here?" So these people are now kind of hungry for miracles because they had the feeding of the 5,000 and they just want to see more. But Jesus' response is really surprising. Remember that these are the same people he had compassion on the day before, wanted to make sure they had enough food to eat. But look at what he says to them in verses 26 and 27. He says, "Very truly I tell you, you are looking for me not because you saw the signs I performed, but because you ate the loaves and had your fill. Do not work for food that spoils, but for food that endures to eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For on him God the Father has placed his seal of approval." So basically, Jesus accuses these people of being shallow and materialistic. And by materialistic, I don't mean greedy for money. I mean that they think in terms of the material world. What's most important to them is the stuff of this world. Food and money, politics, lower taxes, those kinds of things. The stuff that you can touch and see. Jesus says, you're looking for me because you got free food yesterday. Even the miracle is kind of secondary for you. It doesn't inspire you to fall down and worship me. It just causes you to wonder what else you could get from me. So he says, don't work for food that spoils. Work for food that endures to eternal life. And they don't key in on the right word there. When he says eternal life, they don't say, ooh, tell us more about eternal life. Instead, they say, what must we do to do the works God requires? Because Jesus used that word. It's a really legalistic approach to spiritual things when they ask that question. What does God want us to do? What are the hoops that he wants us to jump through so he'll be pleased with us? And Jesus says the work of God is this, to believe in the one he has sent, by which he means himself. And they seem to know that, but listen to their response. In verse 30, they asked him, so what sign then will you give that we may see it and believe you? What will you do? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness. As it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat. So they say, we'll believe in you if you prove yourself to us. And here's one idea for how you could do that. You could miraculously give us free bread. Which is what he just said was the wrong thing to be focusing on. And it's what he'd just done for them the day before. So this is his response. Jesus said to them, very truly I tell you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the bread that comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. And then, sir, they said, always give us this bread. Then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. So here we've come to the first of the 7 I am statements in the book of John. 7 times in the book of John, Jesus makes a statement that begins with I am, which is a claim about who he is and a picture of what he does for us. So through the course of this book, we're going to hear him say, I am the light of the world. I am the door. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I am the vine and you are the branches. But this is the first one. I am the bread of life. Jesus compares himself to a staple, to a basic necessity. And what they should understand is that he's now speaking spiritually, not materially. He's not talking about physical bread. But they don't get that. And Jesus continues to speak that way. We'll pick it up in verse 39. There it says, Jesus says, this is the will of him who sent me, that I shall lose none of all those he has given me, but raise them up at the last day. For my Father's will is that everyone who looks to the Son and believes in him shall have eternal life, and I will raise them up at the last day. So that phrase, I will raise them up at the last day, which Jesus just used twice in 2 verses, we're going to see him use that again later in the conversation in verse 54. So we know what his agenda is. Jesus wants to raise people up at the last day. Another phrase that comes up over and over in this passage is the words eternal life. Jesus keeps saying, I will give them eternal life. Those who trust me receive eternal life. But this crowd doesn't seem especially interested in eternal life. They're not especially interested in what happens after the last day. Their concerns are earthly. What about between now and the last day? Again, it's about free food, lower taxes, those kinds of things. Jesus is not really speaking that language. And the disconnect between these two is what's going to lead us into what happens next in the chapter, and we'll talk about that in the next video.